I moved into the neighborhood thinking it would finally be a fresh start, a place where I could keep to myself, enjoy some peace, and raise my kids without drama. But the very first day I saw her, I knew that peace was a pipe dream. Karen, the HOA president, introduced herself not with a smile, but with a glare sharp enough to slice steel. She stood there on my driveway, arms folded, clipboard pressed against her chest like it was some badge of authority, and she spoke in a tone that dripped with condescension. "We like to keep things orderly around here," she said, scanning me up and down like I was a trespasser instead of a homeowner. "Hopefully you'll be cooperative. We've had trouble with new people before." I forced a polite smile, but deep down something told me this woman wasn't just strict. She was trouble. The first week passed quietly, until one morning I found a thick envelope taped to my front door. Inside was a typed letter with bold red font that read, "Mandatory HOA Security Enhancement Fee, $2,000, due immediately." Supposedly, this was to maintain the neighborhood's new surveillance cameras, but the letter wasn't on HOA letterhead, and the wording felt sloppy, almost like a bad scam email. I showed my wife, and she laughed so hard she nearly spilled her coffee. $2,000 for cameras that don't even exist?" she scoffed, but my gut tightened. If she was brazen enough to tape this to my door, she'd be brazen enough to push harder. That same evening, as I stood watering my lawn, Karen strutted by, her heels clacking on the pavement in perfect rhythm, that clipboard balanced under her arm like it had been surgically attached. She stopped, pointed at the notice still taped to my door, and smirked. "I trust you'll handle that promptly," she said. "We don't like residents who think rules don't apply to them." I raised an eyebrow and asked her what exactly the money was for, and she flashed that smug, tight smile. "For maintaining neighborhood standards. Everyone pays it. Don't be the odd one out." Then she turned on her heel and left without waiting for my reply. That night, I couldn't shake the unease. My wife muttered under her breath, "She picked the wrong family this time." And she was right, because both of us are lawyers. Intimidation might work on others, but not on us. I decided to dig deeper. The next day, I casually asked a few neighbors if they had ever paid such a fee. Almost all of them laughed. A retired Navy veteran told me flat out, "There's no such thing, son. We pay our dues, that's it. Karen makes up nonsense when she thinks she can get away with it." Another couple said she had once tried to charge them for seasonal landscaping fines until they threatened to sue her. That was all the confirmation I needed. Karen was scamming. But the strange part was how confidently she carried herself, like she truly believed she was untouchable. That's when I decided to test her. I called her directly and asked politely, "Karen, could you explain exactly what this security fee covers?" Her voice on the other end was sugar-coated but brittle. "It covers the cost of keeping our neighborhood safe. Don't overthink it." I pressed further, asking where it was documented in the HOA bylaws. She dodged. I asked if there was an official receipt system. She avoided again. Finally, she snapped. "Look, pay the fee. Don't start asking questions you don't want the answers to. People who don't cooperate find themselves very uncomfortable around here." It wasn't just arrogant. It was a threat. What Karen didn't know was that I had been recording the entire conversation. That night, my wife and I listened to it together, shaking our heads. "This is about to get interesting," she whispered. And she was right. Within a week, word had spread across the neighborhood. Some neighbors stopped me on walks to quietly thank me for standing up to Karen. Others admitted they had paid her fake fees just to avoid the hassle. One man even confessed she had threatened to block his access to the community pool until he handed her cash under the table. The more I learned, the angrier I became. She wasn't just harassing me. She had built a small empire of intimidation, leeching money off anyone too scared to fight back. That's when Karen escalated. After I ignored her so-called deadline, she marched up to my house one morning while I was on the porch sipping coffee. She slammed her clipboard against the railing so hard it echoed. "Enough is enough," she hissed. "You've got 48 hours to pay or you'll regret it." I asked calmly. "Karen, show me paperwork and maybe we'll talk." Her face flushed red. She jabbed a finger at me, her voice shaking with fury. "Don't test me. I've dealt with bigger troublemakers than you." With that, she stomped away. My wife turned to me, her eyes wide. "She's losing it." We had no idea how right she was. 2 days later, I stepped outside to find my driveway completely blocked by bright orange construction cones and a massive "No Parking Violation" sign. My car was effectively trapped. I moved the cones aside, but within an hour, Karen herself showed up, screaming that I was tampering with HOA property. When I laughed and pointed out that I recorded myself removing the cones, her smirk wavered, but only for a moment. She doubled down, threatening to escalate consequences. By that evening, the escalation came. I went to take out the trash and found a thick, heavy chain looped around my front gate, secured with 2 brass padlocks. I froze. My wife joined me, eyes wide in disbelief. Karen had literally locked us in. Across the street, there she was, sipping wine on her porch like a queen overseeing her prisoners. She even waved, jingling the keys in her hand. "Pay up, or enjoy your cage," she shouted. That's when I realized she had gone too far, and this wasn't just HOA drama anymore, it was criminal. My wife whispered, "She's crossed the line," and I knew exactly what I had to do. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. The 911 dispatcher could hardly believe it when I explained that the HOA president had physically chained our gate shut, trapping us inside like criminals in our own home. Within minutes, flashing red and blue lights lit up the street, and a fire truck pulled up right behind the patrol car. Neighbors poured out of their houses, some clutching coffee mugs, some with phones already recording, because apparently Karen's insanity was better entertainment than primetime TV. The firefighters jumped out with bolt cutters, while the officers marched straight across the street to where Karen sat smugly on her porch, twirling the keys in her hand like she'd already won. When they asked her if she had really locked us in, she actually laughed and said proudly, "Yes, they refused to pay the initiation fee and rules have consequences." You could have heard a pin drop. The officers exchanged looks and one of them said flatly, "Ma'am, you just admitted to false imprisonment." Her smug grin faltered for the first time as they spun her around and cuffed her wrists, the clink of metal echoing down the street. Neighbors gasped, then some actually clapped. One older gentleman even shouted, "Finally!" as Karen shrieked that she was the HOA president and they couldn't do this to her. The firefighter cut the chains and freed us, and I'll never forget the look on Karen's face as she was loaded into the back of the squad car while her clipboard lay abandoned on the sidewalk. In court, her arrogance collapsed completely. The prosecutor painted her as a dictator who abused her position to harass and endanger her own neighbors. When the judge asked her to point to the bylaw that authorized a security enhancement fee, she stammered and had nothing. It was game over. The verdict was brutal. 6 months in county jail, heavy fines, and an order to pay me damages for harassment and distress. More importantly, she was permanently removed from the HOA board. The neighborhood breathed a collective sigh of relief, and several neighbors thanked me for standing up when no one else dared. As I stood on my porch that evening, the chains gone and the air finally calm, I couldn't help but think. Karen thought she was untouchable, but in the end, she wasn't above the law.